RAM OCS. Zone and device management. Once we have scanned and detected the amplifiers in our network, they will appear in the amplifier section on the tree under devices. In this tree we can organize and configure the different amplifiers connected to our system. At the top of the tree there are a series of icons that carry out the following functions. The magnifying glass icon scans the network from zero to detect all the amplifiers we have connected. The magnifying glass plus icon scans the network to detect any new amplifiers which we can then add to the ones already stored. The magnifying glass with the exclamation mark allows us to recover any amplifier that has been lost in the network for whatever reason. The zone plus icon allows us to add a new zone to the existing structure. Zone minus allows us to delete a zone from the existing structure. Zone dots allows us to change the name of a zone. Tree expand opens all the branches of the menu tree. Tree contract closes all the branches of the menu tree. We also have access to other options by right-clicking the mouse either over a zone or over a specific amplifier. By doing this we can configure the Ethernet for a specific amplifier. Ethernet config. Reconnect a lost device. Add virtual amplifiers to the network, delete a device, rename a device, or identify a device by showing a message in the front amplifier display. We can also create, delete or rename zones in the same way as with the icons described previously. The zones. We can organize the amplifiers in a network by creating different zones. These zones usually correspond to the physical zone of the amplifier. This not only allows us to visually organize the amplifiers, but to also control and monitor different amplifiers in different zones simultaneously, as well as sending presets or libraries to all of the amplifiers at the same time. To create a zone, once we have detected all the amplifiers in our installation, we need to go to the top of the tree and click on the Add Zone icon. We then introduce and validate a name for the zone. We can now drag any amplifier to be placed in this new zone. We can include as many zones as we wish, including zones within zones. Once we have created the zone and assigned the corresponding amplifiers, we can now manage all the amplifiers of the zone simultaneously. This is done through the Preset Manager and the Monday standby buttons that appear to the right of the zone name. With these buttons we can carry out the following functions. Preset Manager. This allows us to manage all presets and libraries of all the amplifiers in a zone simultaneously. On pressing the Preset Manager button, a new window will open where we first need to load the library that we want to work with in this zone. We do this with the button Open Library File. Once we have a library loaded on the computer, we have the option to send it to all the amplifiers in the zone using the button Send to Zone. We could also, if necessary, manage all the presets individually, or recall them to be placed in the input or output of all the amplifiers at the same time. We would do this with the Send and Recall buttons, which would simultaneously send and recall as current the desired preset in any section of the amplifiers. For example, if we wanted to send and set as current the preset from output 2 in all the channels D, we would need to select the preset in the same window and press Send. By doing this we have now set the said preset in the amplifier libraries and we have recalled it and set as current in the D channels. The same occurs with the input presets or the root section, which would be changed directly in the current amplifier configuration. A global preset would act in the same way, sending the necessary input and output presets to the amplifier and setting them as current, together with the defined root configuration of the global preset. We can also, by using the global preset, input preset and output preset tabs, send the presets individually, send selected preset, or collectively send all presets to the amplifier libraries. In these windows we can also carry out the function of send and recall that we have seen under the Send and Recall tab. Lastly, when we load a library in a zone, this library will be assigned to the current project and will also be the library that opens automatically when we open any of the amplifiers in the zone. However, we can still open any other library for a specific amplifier at any time. Monitor, Standby. With the Monday Standby button we can carry out two very different functions on the amplifiers in the zone. On the one hand we can remotely turn the amplifiers of the zone simultaneously on and off, and we can also monitor any alerts, disconnection, fault, impedance, or temperature found in any of the amplifier channels. With regards to controlling the turning on/off of the amplifiers, we have the option to turn them on in groups to avoid an overcurrent in the power supply network at the moment of turning on. We can configure the number of amplifiers we want to turn on at the same time, as well as the difference in seconds between the turning on of each group. This way, when we press the on button, the amplifiers will be turned on sequentially. In this case, for example, we will turn the devices on 3 by 3, with a delay of 2 seconds between each group. When we press the standby button, all the amplifiers will be turned off simultaneously. With regards to the alert monitoring function, Alerts Monitor, this allows us to monitor in real time the amplifiers connected to our network, or to a specific zone, to check whether an alert exists due to a fault. When this situation occurs, the amplifier channels with the fault appear in the lower section of the window, showing also the reason for the alert. It is also possible to show all the connected amplifier channels continuously, and not only the channels showing an alert. To do this, all we have to do is change the selection under the Devices List section and mark all. By default, only channels with an alert are shown in the list. The possible causes of an alert are: power alert. Lights up in red when an amplifier is detected as being off and on standby, and would need to be turned on. This alert also activates when we lose the Ethernet connection with the amplifier, which could mean the amplifier is completely turned off. Once we receive this power alert, a list will appear at the bottom of the window showing all the amplifier channels with a fault. An orange box will show if the amplifier is on standby, and a white box will show if the situation of the amplifier cannot be determined due to a loss of connection. By selecting any of the channels in the list, we can use the controls that appear in the right of the window to turn the amplifiers back on. Fault alert. The fault LED in the Monitor Alerts section will light up in red when there is a fault in one of channels, for example when there is no output in the speakers, but input is detected. This could be due to a failure in a specific channel in this amplifier. At the bottom of the window we will see the channel that has the fault, with the fault box lit up in red. Impedance alert, Zeta. This alert lights up in red when the impedance of the speakers measured by the amplifier is not within the limits defined by the user for each amplifier channel. This may be caused by a disconnected speaker, open load shown as O, an inadequate connection, or if there is a fault in the speaker itself. To configure the maximum and minimum impedance limits of each channel, we open the Amplifier List, Device List All, and select the channel we want to configure. On the right, a new configuration column will appear, where we need to introduce the minimum impedance Z-min and maximum impedance Z-max values for this specific channel. We need to take into account that the impedance measurement of any speaker is something essentially variable depending on the musical program, so big impedance fluctuations are to be expected. The impedance measurement shown is the average of the minimum impedance measurements being monitored, to try to attain a value similar to that of the nominal impedance value of the speaker. We need to note also that in order to obtain a correct measurement of impedance, We need a minimum output signal to be able to carry out a precise reading. The impedance box will light up in green when the value measured falls within the limits defined by the user. It will light up in red when these limits are exceeded, and it will show a white background when it is unable to measure the impedance value of the speaker, possibly due to lack of output signal. Temperature alert, temp. We will see a red light when the amplifier temperature goes above the limit defined by the user. Initially this limit is 90%, but can be modified in the same way as the impedance limits seen previously. Lastly, it's worth noting that this monitor standby window can be minimized to show the alerts in a compact format, which means we can see different alert windows corresponding to different zones, all on the same screen if necessary. Also, we have an information icon which allows us to quickly check which elements this window is monitoring or controlling.